What would happen if I raised the flaps in this Cessna 172 while I'm right in the middle of a flare? Would I crash and die, or is this a legitimate landing technique that you should consider using? What's up, fellow pilots? I'm Josh, and this is my father-in-law, Mike. You may remember me trying this landing technique in a Piper Cherokee with manual flaps. And I've been getting a ton of comments saying that this technique would never work in a high-wing aircraft or in a Cessna 172. And because of that, we're going to try it in me and Mike's Cessna 172. Are you prepared to lose this aircraft?
Sure.
I was just kidding. I don't think we're going to lose it. Now that I made that video in the Piper Cherokee, I've actually been getting quite a few pilots tell me that they've used this technique as well. In fact, I'm reading a super interesting book on mountain flying by Sparky, and he says that this is a very common technique that bush pilots use. And someday I'm going to be a bush pilot when I grow up. So without further ado, let's go to Uncle Josh for story time.
Welcome to Story Time with Uncle Josh. Let's see, where were we? Suppose everything appears to have gone properly, but you arrive over a short runway floating along with no chance for a go-round, and the end of the runway approaching fast. Don't push the nose forward and land on the nose wheel. Get rid of the flaps. The coefficient of lift will be reduced sufficiently to allow the airplane to be landed. But do this close to the ground. You don't want to stall from a high altitude.
Claremore traffic, Skyhawk 3148 X-ray, 2 miles to the east, entering a left downwind for 18, Claremore. Alright, I'm headed down to traffic pattern altitude, which is 1700 here at Claremore. We're going to make everything normal just like we would, and then it's going to be a normal landing with full flaps, and then once I get into the flare, I'm going to raise them. These are electronic flaps. I don't have notches technically in this one, so we're just going to raise them as we get in the flare, and that means I won't be able to put my hand on the throttle. Because of that, if I need to go around for some reason, I'm going to leave the carb heat off. I don't see any reason to use carb heat today. And then also, if we need to go around, I'm going to leave the flaps right where they are for the go around if I need that for some reason. 100 feet high, coming in for the downwind. I don't see anybody. Claremore traffic, Skyhawk 3148 X-ray, left downwind, 18, Claremore. Seatbelts on, fuel selector valve on both, mixture best power. Throttle set. Landing and taxi lights on. I'll get the rest here in just a second. And I'm going to be as stable as possible on this so things don't get hairy at the bottom, because I don't...
Pogue traffic, 29, short final for runway 35, Pogue.
I've only done this one other time, and it was in a Cherokee, and so it was with manual flaps, which is really weird. And this is a high-wing aircraft, too, so I don't know exactly what to expect. All right, power's coming back a little bit. Carb heat's staying off. Mixture best power. 1, 2, 3, first notch of flaps. And Claremore traffic, Skyhawk 3148 X-ray, left base, 18, Claremore. Alright, second notch of flaps, lower them in the turn, because that's what I do. I turn tight on purpose because this guy's waiting on us, so I'm going to go ahead and lower all of them. Did I call base? I called base, yeah.
Yes, you did call base, yes.
Alright, we are full flaps now. So when we raise those, that's going to move our center of pressure forward, which moves our center of gravity back. Claremore traffic, Skyhawk 3148 X-ray, base to final, 18, Claremore. A little slow, pitching down, power for our altitude. Now I'm pitching for 60. Very stable, it's very smooth tonight, so this is a good test. We'll see how this works out here. A little fast, I'm going to pitch up just a touch. We'll see what happens here, and if this guy witnesses a firm landing, I'm sure he's going to enjoy that. So, we'll carry just a little bit of power here on purpose. Idle power, flaps up. Whew, that happened really quickly. I was not expecting that. I probably should have carried a touch of power. Carb heat's already off, flaps are up, power. Alright, rotate. That was really interesting.
Yes, it was.
So,
Pogue traffic, Philly 9 on left crosswind, turning left downwind for runway 35, Pogue.
The interesting thing about that is, I really feel like I could control exactly the spot I touched down on with that type of landing. Are you ready to take over for a second?
Sure.
Your controls.
My controls.
Your controls. In just a second, I'm going to try this landing again because I know that someone in the comments is going to say that I just got lucky. Because they did in the comments on my last video. But before I do that, I want to take a look at some of the science behind this landing technique.
I want to talk about this because I think that there's a huge misconception about what actually happens when you raise or lower the flaps. And that's probably because there are quite a few different types of flaps. But as a general rule, anytime you lower the flaps on an airplane, the center of lift moves back towards the back of the wing. As you may remember from our lesson on weight and balance, the airplane balances on the center of lift. So if the center of lift moves back, that puts the center of gravity further forward, which means that the nose of the airplane will pitch down because the front of the aircraft is heavier now. That's why the nose of your airplane usually pitches down when you lower the flaps. Your center of lift moves back, and that makes the nose heavier. Now, I'm about to make some people really mad by saying this, but lowering the flaps does not increase your angle of attack. I'm so tired of instructors teaching this to their students. It's not true at all. At first glance, it does appear that lowering the flaps increases an aircraft's angle of attack because the chord line moves. And if the wing were to stay at this angle in relation to the relative wind, that would be true, but it doesn't. On most types of flaps, the center of lift moves back, and that makes the nose pitch down, and that changes the relative wind. And that's what your angle of attack is. It's the angle between the wing's chord line and the relative wind. Well, if my chord line moves back like this, and my nose pitches down at the same time because of the CG change, then my angle of attack hasn't changed now, has it? No, it hasn't. So, flaps do not increase your angle of attack. In fact, according to the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, flaps increase both lift and induced drag for any given angle of attack. And that's what we really need to know about these things. Flaps allow us to fly at slower air speeds because they create more lift, and they allow us to descend faster because of the extra drag. If this is true, let's take a look at what happens when we raise the flaps. If you're a newer pilot, your instructor has probably already taught you the dangers of raising the flaps too quickly when you go around on a botched landing.
Flaps. Car P. All the way down.
Nope. My controls. Wait till you get a positive rate of climb before you raise that next flap.
Okay.
If you raise them too quickly, the aircraft can sink back down towards the runway, and worst case you could crash into something at the end because the wings aren't creating as much lift as they were with the flaps in. That's why we teach new students to slowly raise those flaps to eliminate drag, but not too fast so we don't kill the lift too quickly. Okay, so let's look at what happens when we raise the flaps in the flare based on what we just talked about. First of all, when we raise the flaps, our airplane is going to lose a lot of lift. Fortunately, the plane we're flying today has electric trim, so we can't raise all the flaps up at once, like we can with manual flaps. When I tried this maneuver in the Piper Cherokee, which has manual flaps, I was extremely careful on how quickly I raised them so I didn't smash into the runway. But with electric trim like we have today, I can just hold my finger there and they'll just gradually come up. In addition to that, we know that our center of lift moves back when we lower the flaps, so when we raise the flaps, the opposite must be true, which means that the nose will pitch up a little bit when we raise the flaps. The interesting thing about this is that new student pilots tend to find no flap landings much easier. And the reason for that is because when you land without flaps, the nose of the airplane is slightly higher than normal, and there's almost no flare. So, if we raise the flaps in the flare, that should bring the nose up at least as high as it is when you're landing without flaps. The only problem is that when you raise the flaps, you lose a lot of lift. In some situations, this can be a huge advantage. In that book I mentioned earlier, Sparky says that flaps up in the flare is a great option when the airplane is floating and go around is not an option. What better way to kill your lift and sink down to the runway at a steeper angle? In addition to that, our wings still create lift once the airplane is on the ground. That's why we raise the flaps as soon as possible once we touch down on a short field landing. We want to get rid of as much lift as possible so that the brakes can do their job and get the airplane stopped. Remember, brakes stop airplanes. Now, before we go out and try this landing a couple more times, I do want to mention a couple things that you should keep in mind. First, I do not recommend that new students try this landing. Even with electric flaps, there's quite a bit going on while you're in the flare. It can also be a lot more difficult to go around if you need to do so. During a go-around for this landing, you need to make a decision on which flap setting is best for the go-around. And if you don't know for sure, you could easily crash before you're able to make a decision. That's why Sparky offers this as a choice when go-around is not an option. Okay, let's go ahead and try this landing a couple more times to make sure I didn't just get lucky.
My controls.
Your controls.
My controls. Yeah, so I pulled the flaps up and like the second I did that, we touched down. I might have done it a little late, and so we basically touched down as soon as I did that. So we basically killed all our lift, and we moved the center of pressure forward, which moved the CG back. So we did get a nose up attitude when I did that. So that was kind of interesting. All right, climbing up to 1700. It kind of shocked me how quickly we touched down after I did that, because I'm used to floating. That's actually something that Sparky says in that mountain flying book. Is he's like, if you are floating and there's like no chance for a go around, he says get rid of the flaps, and that'll get you down really fast. And I was surprised at how quickly that one got us down. Claremore traffic, Skyhawk 3148 X-ray left, downwind 18, Claremore.
Low traffic.
All right, seatbelts on, fuel selector valve on both. Mixture best power, throttle set. Carb heat staying off for these landings. There's no danger of carb heat today. Did you want to try one of these?
I don't know, let's see.
Claremore traffic 2196 Lima, turning crosswind for runway 18. Claremore traffic.
Okay, so he's
Pogue traffic, Philly 9, short final, runway 35, Pogue.
All right, we're being the touchdown point, pulling the power. First notch of flaps. Carb heat is staying off. All right, pitching for 70. All right, clear left. Claremore traffic, Skyhawk 3148 X-ray, left base 18, Claremore.
Claremore traffic 2196 Lima, turning downwind for runway 18. Claremore traffic.
Okay, he's
traffic, Kelly 2, left crosswind 635, post traffic.
We're high. We'll lower all the flaps here. Trim, trim, trim. Once I trim, the airplane will base.
Post traffic, Kelly 2, turning left downwind for 35, practicing short approaches, post traffic.
Claremore traffic, Skyhawk 3148 X-ray, base to final 18, Claremore. They really need to switch these frequencies. There's too much chatter on these two CTAFs.
Right.
All right. Starting to slow to 60 knots. I'm still high. I got all the flaps in. We'll see what happens this time. I'm going to aim a little bit longer this time. Last time I aimed for the threshold, so that was kind of weird that we sunk down so quickly. So that kind of shocked me. So I'm going to aim just a little bit farther down. I'm going to aim for the numbers. That should put me on the third stripe roughly with a normal landing. This one I'm guessing we're going to land on that first or second stripe. Let's see what happens. 60 knots. This is looking good. Might be just a touch low on my glide slope here. Okay, at this point right here, I know I'm going to make the runway. So I'm going to go to idle power, and we're going to go ahead and start raising those flaps. I cannot believe that. It's actually pretty smooth. I'm still pulling some backstick pressure, but not nearly as much as I usually do. We're going to try one more of those because I'm curious. Alright, flaps are already up, carb heat's off, power's coming in, power's set. Good rotate speed, we're rotating. Climbing away.
Claremore traffic 2196 Lima, turning base for runway 18. Claremore traffic.
That's good to know to keep in mind. I mean,
yeah. So if you...
that would be really floating or something.
Yeah, because Sparky was saying that, you know, if you're coming in, especially on like a mountainous area.
Right.
Claremore traffic 2196 Lima, turning final for runway 18. Claremore traffic.
He's turning final. So if you're coming in a mountainous area and there's a mountain beyond and you don't really have a hope for a go around and the airplane is floating, get rid of the flaps.
Okay.
I mean, I could see this as being useful because, I mean, basically as soon as I did that, the airplane said, okay, we're going to sit down right here. I really didn't see it as being dangerous. I mean,
no,
I didn't really do much different than what I normally do.
Traffic, Kelly 2, going around.
Okay, now I'm genuinely curious. I want to see how short we can land when we touch down, when we do this method.
Pogue traffic 29, left base for runway 35, Pogue.
I feel like this might actually shorten your landing distance. I wonder, I bet you anything, we could get stopped before those 1,000 footers.
Huh, okay.
I think we can. All right, seatbelts on, fuel selector valve on both. Flaps are still up, make sure
Pogue traffic, Kelly 2, turning left crosswind for 35, pogue traffic.
Claremore traffic, Skyhawk 3148 X-ray, left downwind 18, Claremore. I feel like if I do this time, I use a threshold as my aim point. I'll put it down on the numbers, and then I think we can get stopped by that third stripe actually. All right, there's a perch point. Power's coming back, carb heat's staying off. First notch of flaps, 2, 3.
Claremore traffic 2196 Lima, turning crosswind for runway 18. Claremore traffic.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Second notch of flaps. Looking for 70. And we have her trimmed out. She'll basically fly herself with good trim. It's the poor man's autopilot. We're high. Gonna drive it out. We're high. Claremore traffic, Skyhawk 3148 X-ray, left base 18, Claremore.
Claremore traffic, 296 Lima, turning downwind for runway 18, Claremore traffic.
Claremore traffic, Skyhawk 3148 X-ray, base to final 18, Claremore. We're high, I know. We cut it really tight. I like challenging myself. Oh, we're idle power. Looking for 60. I kind of overshot on
Poke traffic, Kelly 2, mile for 35, poke traffic.
Overshot on purpose.
Poke traffic 29 upwind for 35 poke.
Overshot on purpose so we could get back on profile. So that's another thing you can do to get down is kind of do this little S-turns, I guess. It basically lengthens your distance.
Something running out.
Yeah, that camera died. Flaps up, maximum braking.
Yeah, you could have.
I could definitely have stopped before the 1,000 footers. If I would have mashed on him, I know that guy's behind us, so I didn't really want to mash on him, but I think we could have stopped well before the 1,000 footers. If you're glad we didn't die in this video, I would really appreciate if you smash that like button. It's so much easier to edit these videos when you survive the landing at the end. Thanks for flying with us today, and keep on learning, and I'll see ya!
Welcome to Story Time with Uncle Josh.